Hi, everyone. Welcome to Women in Big Data Communication and Career Growth Session 4 with Bob Loftus. Thanks for taking time to invest in your success by attending today's session, which focuses on interviewing for success. Women in Big Data is a grassroots organization. It started with 15 women in Silicon Valley in 2015 and is a worldwide organization with several chapters across several countries and has more than 16,000 members as of today. Uh, Women in Big Data organizes several events in business skills and technical skills tracks. We organize several training sessions across the globe, collaborating with several corporate sponsors. And WIBD also provides a network of technical women from early career to women in leadership positions. Here is how you could get involved with this organization. You can become a member by joining our LinkedIn group, following us on Twitter or Facebook, or attending our meetup events. Companies can become sponsors by hosting at least 2 WIBD events per year. It is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Bob Loftus. Bob is founder of Now Forward Coaching and provides career transition services. He works with his clients to use their talent, energy, and expertise to break through self-imposed limits to their success in career growth, personal relationships, and overall health. Bob has volunteered with WIBD for past several years by speaking at several of our business skills events. Bob has won Trainer of the Year awards for his great work with WIBD and has private coaching practice that is taking clients. He regularly volunteers with several other organizations like promatch.org and CSI 10. Bob also supports nonprofits such as Bay Area Cancer Connections and Breathing Spaces. So please join me in welcoming Bob. Bob, you can start. I'll stop sharing.
Okay. Thanks, Merdula. Okay. So, let's see which, okay, I'm going to stop the share and start it again. Okay, so I hope that everyone can see the slides for tonight. Yeah. Could somebody tell me if you don't see a slide?
Not yet. You're not sharing yet.
Not?
We
Okay.
can see you. Now you're sharing. All good.
Now?
Yeah,
Now
we can
it's
see
good?
it now. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, welcome everyone. Glad to be here again. You're my favorite meetup. Sorry, there was a little technical issue going on today, but it happens in the world of Zoom. So as we go along, I may be able to look at your questions in the chat panel, and I'll ask Merdula to speak up and let me know if we've built up a number of questions. And if all goes well, we're going to have 3 different breakout sessions where you can practice some of the things that I'm going to actually demo tonight. And of course, those of you who've seen my presentations before, we really stress, especially when you're in the breakout with a small group, that you feel psychologically safe to give constructive candor, to give your opinion knowing this is a safe environment and it's a very productive environment. We were going to have a short poll, and that poll was about how you feel about interviewing. So unfortunately, the way my screen is set up, I can't really get the feedback from you directly, but I'm going to assume there's a mix of people, some who are more comfortable and some who are rather uncomfortable. Okay, so you could type this in the chat. Let me see if I can get the chat out so I can see. Just let me know, what do you feel is most challenging for you about interviewing? And if there's nothing at all challenging, this will be a very short session tonight, and we can get to that Democratic National Convention speech. Sorry. Express myself clearly in English. So that could be not having English as a first language. Anyone who's lived in another country for a while, like me, appreciates people who speak more than one language. Lack of feedback, probably from the interviewers. When they don't turn on their cameras, oh boy, how unfair. Yeah, and just keep that in mind that you are interviewing them too. So these are the kind of people you really want to work with, who don't show you who they are. And it's kind of like the police interrogation, you know, the one-way mirror. You could ask them to do that. Convey I have the right skills, definitely going to cover that. How to effectively sell myself, yep. Framing my answers the way a technical manager wants to hear. Oh, that's really a good one. We just have to know what kind of a technical manager, because everyone's got different styles. Talking about the experiences that are the most relevant for the position. Great. Like reading the interviewer's mind. Well, I don't know. I think it's reading the job description's mind. Worrying if I would do well at the interview. So by the way, being nervous is a good sign, because it means you're paying attention to do your best work. Okay. If you are totally calm, like, is it such a big deal? You might miss some opportunities, okay, to react well. Responding to challenging questions, we'll definitely talk about that. Blanking out, ooh, yeah. And quick restoration, because it can happen. You know, I'm sorry, I'm kind of stumbling a little bit. Could I start over in answering that one? I'm so excited about this position. It just got to me. Would it be okay to start over? Now, if they say no, that might be another indication this could be a tough group to work with culturally. Predicting the questions. Yep, there's a way you can have a good sense of those. Cannot read how the interview is going. Like one time I felt I fitted the right role, but I didn't get the role. So I think I didn't convey enough. Yeah, I don't know. We're all so self-critical. It's pretty hard to predict. Online interview in the COVID era. So towards the end, I have some points about doing that. And you'll see from my demos, the way I'm doing this, some tips too. Low confidence. Yeah, low confidence is a big deal. Okay. Thank you so much. It really helps to have an idea of where everyone's at. Okay. So I'm going to show you some models of how to answer very typical questions, get some tips. Underneath it all, it's really about how the results you've gotten so far are exactly what they need to do the job they say they need done. We're never quite sure. And you're going to get a chance to practice tonight. So I do want to talk a little bit about our communications impact. And a few of you may have seen this one before. I think it's really important to put out there, especially when, you know, you're nervous, you're wondering how you're coming across. So ask yourself this: if you look at this couple, would you say they're having an argument? Would that be a pretty good observation of what's happening? And maybe they are, but they also might be pumping themselves up to do a beach body workout in their backyard. We don't know unless we're actually there. Body language is very expressive, and we have certain patterns that we wish to follow. So let's look at this other example from a very popular film, really well done. These are great actors, and there's just a lot of meaning conveyed in this scene. Mother on the right, daughter on the left. It looks like the daughter is consoling the mother. And those of you who remember the movie, the daughter would just like a little consolation herself. But their facial expressions give a lot of information to us. So looking at this, take a guess to yourself. If we think of communication has 3 parts to it and they add up to 100%, what percent would you think the words we use are? What percent of the 100 would be how we speak those words? And what percent would be how we look and behave? If I had a little better access to my screen capabilities here, I would be getting more reactions from you, but can't really do it. So, this study has been around and it's held up for decades. So the words we use are really only about 7% of the impact. So think about that in the interview. The moment you enter that room, they are making decisions about you based on how you look, how you move, how you, your facial expressions even. And then your tone of voice actually has more effect than the words you use. So that's a little off-putting to us sometimes when we think, whoa, if I just say the right words, I'll get the job. Mostly they want to know 3 things, and you're going to hear this a lot tonight. Can you do this work? Do you really want to? And will you fit in with us? Are you one of us? Those are the big questions that you always want to be paying attention to no matter what they actually ask you. Make sure you're covering one of those 3 or all 3 in answers that you give. And dress appropriately, even on screen like this. I'm sort of business casual, I would guess, and it works with this group. Sometimes you might have to be a little dressier, and your recruiter, the one who is your main contact, will let you know about that. So think about this. How do you experience stress? I have some new examples from this workshop that I did before. So a lot of people feel it in their neck, in their upper back, some people in their lower back, some people in their stomach all scrunched up or just feel like in knots. So think to yourself, what signals does your body give you that you are stressed out? So remember, it's not a thought, it's a physical reaction. So you could type in the chat room what body signals you get. Like for me, my mouth gets dry. So like even in doing this tonight, I have liquids nearby. I just kind of dry up, which means I'm probably heating up. Okay. Shoulder tightness for sure. Shoulders, tense muscles. So Christina, where are those tense muscles? Is in your hips, your feet, your stomach? Short of breath. Yeah, breathing. That might be shallow breathing kind of fast. Sweating, and that sweating and stomach pain, those are big ones. Sweating is your temperatures going up. So sometimes your palms, sweat, other part, your under your arms. Some people, it's their forehead. With my hairstyle, if I expressed in my forehead, it would be pretty obvious that I was stressed out because you could see the drips. Sweaty hands, dry throat also. Cheeks get warm and red. Yeah. And stomach pain also, there's some people lose their appetite and some people gain appetite, kind of nervous eating. So the reason I bring this up is because it's very important for you to know your body's telling you something, that you are stressed, like something has changed. And remember that in the interview, you're looking across at another human being, at least one, maybe more, and they might be stressed because they could find this event stressful for them. So look for signs like a little bit of perspiration or a little fidgeting. Some people will, tap things, move their hands once in a while like this. Those could be signs when they're repetitive that they're nervous. So your job in the interview is to actually be there with that person, not in your head totally. Notice them and be aware of yourself and try to calm yourself down. So one of the best ways that everybody knows to calm down, one of the most effective ways, is simply to slow your breathing and breathe deeply. That will help, that sends signals to your body to calm the cortisol reaction, the stress reaction, and ease yourself down. So deep breathing, it doesn't have to be exaggerated, but within 6 or 7 seconds will actually start the process of easing your stress reaction. And those of you know that I like to do a little bit of relaxation exercise in these events, these webinars. So being calm inside means you can be stronger outside. You can be more focused and aware of what's happening. So I'm going to show you, we may have done this at a previous one. This is one example of a process called havening, and it comes from Safe Haven. And it doesn't require a prescription or a doctor's visit. It's something we can all do for ourselves, create a safe haven. So in this particular one, it's kind of like washing away stress. So you could sit there and do it with me if you like, or if that's not comfortable, you could just breathe deeply. But I want to give you a minute or so to just calm down. So you couldn't do this in an interview. It would be very strange. But before the interview in private, you could. So start with your hands, your fingertips by your cheekbones, and then drag the palms of your hands up to your forehead, pull them back across the crown of your head, come down your back of your head, around your throat, and then back up. So it's kind of like a washing movement. And if you're not speaking, as I am, you might find yourself starting to relax pretty quickly. And basically, one thing I always notice is that I exhale a little bit more deeply. So as we are doing this, just for a little while, it creates endorphins, which are very good for counteracting stress. And it creates oxytocin, the hormone that negates cortisol. There are a few other little exercises like this, but this is kind of a nice one. You only have to do it for a little while and you start to calm down. So you might try this if your head's starting to hurt you, if you're having trouble sleeping, you might try it. There's another thing that you probably know about from Amy Cuddy from some years ago. It was kind of controversial, called power posing, where you would actually stand with your arms on your hips like Superwoman, or you could be standing with your hands straight up in the air, kind of the victory salute. And you do that in the restroom before the interview in the stall by yourself for about 4 or 5 minutes, and you'll be sending signals to your body that you're just doing fine. It's a confidence, a kind of assertiveness pose. And she found in a lot of her studies that the people, usually college students, who did this always were the top candidate in a series of interviews that came up. And the ones that were sitting in the waiting room, scrunched up, looking at their cell phone, did not do as well. So those are some ways to kind of calm yourself down, even when you're just thinking about the interview. So this part here is a reminder of where we are in our series. Whenever I'm doing coaching with clients or through one of the companies that I work with, we start with a foundation, which is knowing your accomplishments. We talked about these here previously. IAO, an issue you faced, an action you took, an outcome you got. Ideally quantifiable. Your accomplishments put together with your brand, which is based on your values, is the basis for a good resume and a good LinkedIn. It's the best presentation of you for the job you're perfect for. After you've got that foundation, you need to be working on a communications plan, targeting the companies you want to get to, or if you're in your company and you want to get a promotion, what plan are you going to do to talk with your manager about how to get there? How long will it take? So this all adds up to having a source resume, a sort of master that you can use, and it can go to LinkedIn. And let me see if this will move. So after that, when you're applying to a specific job, you should customize your resume using some of the free tools that are available that will actually match your resume to a job description and tell you the words you don't have. You change your resume and your visibility goes up to the recruiters. A very good tool to use. So by the time you get to where we are in interviewing, you need to have some preparation. Just throwing that out there. It's hard to go into an interview not prepared, and there's a lot of preparation. You need to know why you are the strongest candidate for this position, what differentiates you, and have a few of these accomplishment stories to be able to tap into for any question they give you. Now, it would be nice if this were logical and sequential, but it's usually all a mix. So don't worry. If you feel you don't have the foundation, you can work on that more now. So I'm going to do a demo, and after the demo, we'll talk about breakouts where I'd like you to practice this, because we can think this all we want. We could write it on paper all we want, but until you hear yourself saying the words, it really isn't going to help you. So this is a more popular question lately. So in Zoom, virtual video, or in person in the old days, or 6 months ago, what have you been doing lately? Now, do you think they really want to know what you've been up to, like your Facebook activity? No. They only want to know, can you really do what we need done? Do you want to? Are you excited about this? And will you fit in with us? So in order to communicate this, you got to really be there, not just in your head thinking through all the questions that might come up. I suggest imagine a job you really want, what they need for this practice. So I'm going to give you something that I used to do when I was looking for a particular kind of job as an example. But I'd like you to think about this to practice with a partner in our breakout. So in this response, you can also give a bit of your brand, what you're known for. And in that exchange, watch for their reaction and listen to their response when they speak back to you. So let's say I'm approached a few years ago, and in this interview process, I'm asked, Bob, so what have you been doing lately? Well, the truth was, lately I've been looking for a job for many months. I'm a little bit older than your average candidate, and I'm pretty nervous about all this. I didn't say any of that. What I said was, well, what I love to do is be resilient and resourceful in managing multiple complex technical training programs. I really love good collaboration, sharing knowledge, and just enough practice so people can succeed. But lately, I have been working with a group of 220 Silicon Valley professionals, from finance to data science, project managers to executive administrators, all of whom are desperately concerned about their immediate future and the future of their families. And the reaction was, wow, we have 20,000 people like that here. You're one of us. So this was a leadership and employee development position in a company that had been going through a lot of upheaval. And that was exactly what they needed. And I knew this because I had two people at that company, directors, who gave me an internal reference. So I had worked in, to a pretty good position to feel confident, to enjoy myself in the interview, to be serious, and to really listen, to engage in a good interaction. So after that example, do you have any questions for me? You can put them in the chat. I see Anush saying the first screening interview is the most stressful one. Yeah, well, that could be a question on the phone. You're applying for this job. So what do you do? What have you been doing lately? Yeah. So this is where you're going to have to use your imagination, Anush. You have to visualize in your mind the right kind of person you want to be talking to. So have a good image. someone you'd like to talk with. Okay, so now I have to get with Mridula about how many people we actually have in our session now, and how we're going to divide up into breakout rooms. So it could be 3 or it could be 4. I'm not sure how many rooms we could have, but let's say if we could have as many as 10 rooms, then that would cover 30 to 40 people.
We have 32 participants, including us.
Okay, so why don't you don't put us into a room and see if you can get roughly 3 people into each room.
Okay, I actually need like Regina or Stella's help. I don't see that option here. Hey Stella, are you online?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Well, don't do anything yet, because I want to point out that in the chat room, chat panel, you can see the handout about breakouts. It's about the, Athena, you need to be a host for breakout rooms. Co-host rights will not be sufficient.
yeah. Probably.
Am I a host?
No,
I think only Regina is
Regina.
a host.
Oh boy, you gotta love Zoom.
Mhm.
Okay, so there is a way to react to this. All that time I spent getting really nice breakout instructions for you.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that happens. Okay, so what I'm going to do is stop the share, and I am going to look around and and see, does anyone want to volunteer to answer this question? What have you been doing lately? So anyone who's been doing a little practice and wants to try to remember this is a safe environment, just try it out and see how it goes. Of course, I would be very thankful. And I'm willing to select a volunteer. Okay. Who really doesn't want to be called on?
You know what? I'll go ahead and do it.
Okay. So,
Okay. My name is Athena.
okay. Athena.
Yes.
Okay, great. So Athena, we're so glad that you came today. We looked over your resume, looks very interesting. But, what have you been doing lately?
I currently work for a medical device company in the IT department in actually San Diego. And I basically, for me, working on IT projects, mostly software, I have two interesting ones, are proof of concepts. I think one of the challenges in working on proof of concepts is trying to identify what the problem you're trying to solve, what your success criteria is. I think sometimes people go into these projects thinking what they need to know, and they end up not getting their outcomes. So it's really important when you go into these types of proof of concepts projects to have a really clear success criteria and also know when to stop. You don't want to get to, say, 4 or 5 weeks and find out you don't really get the result you want. So my role there is to help my team and really determine that, really set those expectations, what we want to do, and keep them and checking with them and telling them that, if this isn't working out, we need to pause and really rethink what our outcome is going to be.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
What do you think about your response? How did you feel saying that?
I think for me, didn't really have a good, clear example what I was going to use. Because I don't think I normally would prepare. One of the techniques I try to use is I actually put my responses in a PowerPoint presentation in bullet points. So coming here, I think I had a hard time thinking what I wanted to talk about.
Okay, good. Good. And, but you're really clear on, you have a strategy when you're going to do a serious interview of preparing. And probably what I suggest is to make a compelling point sooner rather than later. Yeah. So I had a client some years ago, actually a data scientist, who had been working in IT as a business partner kind of position. really hated her current job, needed to get out. I heard of an opportunity for her through another friend of mine and said, you know, Tanya, I think you need to interview for this. So she did, and she loved the job. And about a month later, people would say, Tanya, what do you do? And she would say, I help save lives from cancer. And they'd go, oh, you're an oncologist. No, I'm a data scientist, and I work closely with biomechanical engineers creating cutting-edge mammography devices that catch tumors that are missed by traditional systems. Would you like to know more about our company? So almost anybody could relate to that, you know? So and that's just sort of not necessarily an interview response, but it could be, you know, it could be. What are you doing lately? Well, you know, lately I feel like I'm saving lives from cancer. Really? You know, like, tell me about that. Like, you got my interest there. So for you, I would say we call it chunking up to a higher level. Like, what is the business impact, the value that you bring to the company by the work you do? The aggregate rather than the details, you know, okay. So that almost anybody could see. Yeah, you know, I sort of herd the cats at times with really technical specialists, and it's wonderful. They like my style, and we get great results. As a matter of fact, last quarter, we saved the company over $1 million by being more efficient. Can I tell you how we did it? So you're going to get that stuff from me a lot. Would you like to, because you did say at the end, do you have any questions for me? What I'm suggesting is just lead it a little bit more specifically, you know, so they ask you more and get to know more about you in that thing you really want to talk about. Thanks a million for stepping up, Athena.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Okay.
And, you know, I think what you said is what I read about is definitely get to your brand and your statement quickly. And definitely this was very helpful. Helps me focus for my next opportunity. Thank you.
Yes, yes. And, you know, we can use this in our current job, talking with a manager, you know, about performance reviews and how quickly can I get, you know, I just wanted to check with you. I believe that I'm doing the highest priority project for us right now. Would you agree? Yeah. And I think that if I got this done by this time, it would make a big difference for us. It would really have an impact on our business. Yeah, good, thanks. I just wanted to be in sync with you. And then next, and you could say, because I'm really excited about getting up to the next grade level within a year, as we talked about when I first hired in. And I just want to make sure that I'm doing the right things to get there. It's okay to be upfront about I'm contributing because I'm expecting that I'm going to grow in my role here. Okay, so you guys, since I don't have the slides up, can look at the handout, breakout number 2. So what I would do is demo breakout number 2. It's why do you want to work here? So please work on this one. This is something I actually had a client who said to me, I had a terrible week. I said, Teresa, why? Like this is good. You've been doing really well. Well, in that interview, they asked me a question that just threw me. And I said, what was it? She said, they asked me why I wanted to work there. Like, and I'm hitting my head against it. Like, you have to be ready for that, because remember, in the 3 questions, can you do this? Do you want to? And will you fit in? You've got to be excited about that company. So what I would get, because at one point I was very interested in working at LinkedIn in the leadership and employee development group. So, you know, I'm interviewing at LinkedIn, the company, and they say, Bob, why do you want to work here? And I said, oh, you kidding me? This was a few years ago. LinkedIn, well, I've been a fan of your products and services for years. I think it really empowers the quality of life for so many people around the planet. And I'm very excited about the little that I know about your leadership transformation programs, and especially what Fred Kaufman has brought to the company. I've done similar things at Symantec. It was a 2-year leadership transformation initiative. And I so enjoyed what I was doing. And I noticed something in the job description that I think relates completely to what I was doing 6 months ago at Symantec. Could I tell you about that? Okay. Also, I knew from my research that at the time, the mission of the company was enable economic opportunity for everyone in the world. And that's easy to remember, pretty cool. So by using their mission back to them or working it in, it shows that you've done some research because you're really interested in this place. It's not, you know, you're just down the street from me and I wouldn't have to commute very far. Or I think I can get a raise here. You know, it has to be about what they do connected to what you love to do. So that was an example. Why do you want to work here? Well, it should be because they need someone to do what you've already done and what you love to do. So you have to have some stories ready for that. So why don't you think about now where you would ideally like to work next? You know, big name companies or a small company or a startup. Just in your imagination, where would you like to be working next? And how would you describe to an interview committee or an individual why you want to work at that company? So again, you don't have to be perfect in what we're doing now. You just need to try to formulate some words. So anyone have the courage to do a little practice? There's no negative feedback here.
I'm happy to go.
Thanks, Anush. Okay, wonderful.
Hi.
So, yeah, Anush, yeah, we're glad you came in today. People have been talking about your resume. You know, first off, why do you want to work here?
So my answer, I just want to kind of prepare before I answer the question. My answer is assuming that we've already talked about the job itself. And while walking through the experience that I have, I showed areas of expertise that are aligned with the job description. So I think this answer of why do you want to work here is more about, you know, as like cultural fit. Why do you want to work here? So, and I'll answer the question.
Okay.
So growing up in Armenia, after the Soviet Union collapsed and the economy collapsed, people lost their jobs and there was a lot of hardships. So I grew up witnessing and experiencing those difficulties that shaped my life. So I was taught from the young age that hard work is important, and it is important to use your maximum potential at all times. So I also learned the value of community and how when you rise and grow, you have the responsibility to help the others. And so I was very active in different movements, women's rights and LGBT advocacy movements. So I am a lifelong learner, and throughout my career, I've always been, I made sure that I can evaluate the changes and the growth that I have. So when I decided to move to the US with my 5-year-old, that was because that was my next step in my growth. And I also wanted opportunities for my child. So it was one of the big step examples in my life. So I wanted to be part of the pioneering and innovative companies and the industries that set the stage for best practices, and they are the set the trends in the world, right? So, and I think that your company is very innovative, and it has a pioneering business model. And among its close competitors in this business model, you are the leading company. And so the next steps are to go further and disrupt the traditional business similar to this could be something like what Airbnb did.
So Anush,
Yeah.
I have to interrupt you. Okay, so that's a little long, and I love your values. You know, I want to work where you want to work for sure. However, in this technical skill set for interviewing, it's really not about us, it's about them. So why do you want to work here? You could cut out everything to, you're one of the most innovative organizations in Silicon Valley, if that's where we are. You know, like just go right into about them. And you could say, you know, I grew up in some, you know, rough situation, and I appreciate innovation, collaboration, you know, looking out for all employees in a cultural, supportive way. And I have two friends who work here, or everything I've read about the company. You have the kind of culture that it's a perfect match for me. And I've done something recently I think would really benefit you. Could I tell you about that? Okay. So, especially coming from another culture, these things they seem like curriculum vitae, like your life, but really they just want to know, how can you make their life easier? To me, most of these things are not a personality, you know, investigation. And the stronger you are with, I've done something like what you need done, and you speak your values like you did, but get to it sooner, so you can get into the proof points, not so much your history, but the things you did that they need to be done, even if you can't quantify them. Like, you know, I worked on an innovative project just recently, and I found that when the team was so collaborative and supportive, we actually exceeded expectations. And my friends who work here say that you do this all the time. It's the perfect match for me. And I wanted to ask you something else that I saw in the job description to see how it compares with my experience. Could I? So you're turning it into this dialogue pretty quickly. Yeah. And that way you don't get caught up telling a longer story. Believe me, we all do this. And one thing I highly recommend, and many of my clients have almost tattooed on their palm of their hand, would you like to know more about that? When you ask that question, then you're getting their agreement, and they see working with Anush is working with someone who wants to make sure that we're on the same page. You know, does it make sense?
Yeah.
So I think all the stuff is good. You just have to condense it. There is a legend that the American writer Mark Twain once said, "If I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter." And that's what you're working on now, is just how do I get that down? So they want to ask you more. Would you like to know more? Yeah, tell me more about that. Okay. Thank you so much for bravely volunteering. That was really good. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So where are we at here time-wise? Let's just see. Oh, we're doing very well. Okay. So the third breakout is on, this one is about behavioral questions, they're called. So we get a lot of these. Amazon Web Services, they have, you know, Amazon in general, they have a lot of protocol about knowing you're being interviewed on their management values. And Google's got its own set, very unique kind of interviewing process. Facebook has theirs, and they can afford it. You know, they have the prestige and power in general to do whatever they want to do. But most companies have a more traditional way. So you're likely going to be asked some behavioral question like, tell me about the worst deadline you ever faced, or tell me about your greatest weakness. That used to be a big one. But I chose as an example, tell me about the worst manager you ever worked with. So if that question were coming at me, I would be prepared for it, I would have a success story based on overcoming that problem with that manager, because I cannot change that other person. I can only change my reaction to that person. And I'm changing my reaction to get what I really want, which is to succeed, exceed my goals, no matter what obstacle comes at me. So I've thought through and prepared an example of that. And I've got a little success story ready. And for all of these things, you know, in this process with women in big data, this is like the fourth one. Way back in the first one, we talked about knowing your values. They're so important because they come in handy during interviews. So you'll notice, I hope, in my demo of where my values might come in. Oh, my worst manager. Yeah, it reminds me of a time at Hewlett Packard just a couple of years ago. I didn't have to work for this man, and he didn't have to work for me, but the success of my team depended on him and his team. So in a way, we were partner managers in this situation. And his idea of good communication was very different than mine. I like to give people all the information they need to be successful, and I cut them loose. They come back to me if they get stuck and they need help. He was a technical expert, and he thought everybody on his team was kind of at his level. And a lot of times they were confused, unhappy, even resentful. But I had to figure out a way to work with him. So I asked people who knew him, how do you get along? And they said, give him a lot of praise. So every time I saw him, I made sure to thank him for some accomplishment that he had recently made himself or with his team, and how much we appreciated his efforts. We got along famously, and his solution helped me change the whole technical training path we were on. And I saved Hewlett Packard over $1 million in unnecessary training last year because of that. Would you like to know how I did it? Could I tell you how I did it? Something like that, okay? So I think you guys see the pattern in this. Like, this is true, this person is hard to work with. I don't think they're an evil person. I think we have different values in how we express our values. And I'm specific about it. Communication is something that he and I did not share in the way we expressed it. And because I was determined to figure out how to make this work, I actually got a quantifiable success that I wanted them to know about. I want to talk about my successes more because I may have realized that that particular success is something they need in their open rec position, according to that job description. So any questions on that or other things that have come up so far? Just want to look through the chat. Okay.
And there aren't like too many questions here.
Okay. So think about how you would respond to a question like that. Remember, why are they asking you, tell me about your worst manager? Well, they want to know, are you still mad? And what kind of managers get to you? Because we want to figure out how you operate. So you want to respond in a way that says, I deal with what's in front of me and I figure a way to be successful. You know, in a sense, it's like a good project manager always knows what might get in the way and how to clear the path. So, of course, I'm going to ask you, who would like to take on that question? It's a really good one to practice. So you find yourself not getting stressed out because you're actually going back to a moment you imagine with that manager and the anger is coming out. So that's what we want to avoid. We want you to be analytical and prepared for this kind of question. So can anyone step up to the line here and take this one on? Tell me about your worst manager. Stephanie, have you ever had a bad manager?
Sure, Bob, I can do this. Let me turn on my camera so you're not just talking to a blank face.
Okay. So I am, let's see where I can see you. I have to move my screen around a little. All right, there we go. So, oh, there you are. Okay.
Sorry, I took the liberty to pin you to.
What's that?
I pinned her video.
Okay, great. So, yeah, well, this has been interesting, Stephanie. Yeah, I have another question. I'm just kind of curious. Tell me about your worst manager you ever worked with.
Okay. Kind of reminds me of a time where I was hired by one manager who then left the organization. And so I was shifted to a new manager who I didn't know at all. It's kind of confusing when you kind of get switched in the organization. That person didn't hire you, they don't know you. So in one of our first one-on-ones, she presented me with some tasks to do, which I dutifully took notes of and went away to work on the items. And then at our next one-on-one, she asked me about them. So I gave her the status of the items I had been working on in the meantime. And her first reaction to me was, well, why did you do that? Why didn't you work on this other task? And I was very, upset because I thought, well, I thought I'd taken notes. And what I learned from it was that I needed to clarify with her what were the priorities of all the items she had given to me so that I made sure that I worked on them in the priority order rather than my assumptions of what I thought was the highest priority.
Cool. And did it work out?
It did. Our relationship was much better once I learned her style and the best way to work with her.
Yeah, that is a great story. There's a lot of stuff going on in there. And it could be a clash of values because, as you said in the beginning, hey, I had one manager and they changed it up. And I guess it fell on me to figure out what's the highest priority. And I assumed that the manager would take the initiative. I mean, that could be one scenario.
Right.
And you're saying, I learned from this that it's important for me with a new energy level, a new manager to figure out what's their priority because I want to make them successful. Yeah. And so, you could possibly lead on to, and so we continued in our dialogue through our regular one-on-ones, and I got recognized in my performance review for actually accomplishing what was the highest priority. And I'll tell you, I learned a lot from that, and I feel very successful for it. In fact, that thing that I got promoted for is exactly what I wanted to talk with you about, what you need.
Okay.
You can tell I'm always going to be bringing it back. But it has to be honest that this thing that you want to talk about is probably what they want, what they need. Yeah, cool. And again, this is a good example of chunking up. You try to figure out what was the problem. Well, you said it towards the end. It was I had an assumption, right? And I figured out that I need to really, be inquisitive to find out what's the most important thing. And just a short break from our sponsor in the program. For everybody in their job now, it's so important to do this stuff all the time with your manager. There's a wonderful book called The One Thing by Keller. I forget his first name, but of Keller Williams Real Estate, wildly successful company. Their real estate sales agents are coaches. They all go to about 36 days a year for coaching training on how to be a good salesperson and a good coach for their clients who are buying, big investments. And his take in the book, The One Thing, is there's so many things that we can do. And frankly, for women, especially for moms, you're juggling all the time. There's this, stereotypical expectation you're supposed to handle everything. But most successful people know what is the one thing that I need to do that makes the biggest difference. The people who go up in their success are the ones who've worked in developing a way of knowing. So as a parent, what's the one thing I can do with this child today that will make a big difference in our relationship? Not that I do everything, but what's the one thing that matters most? You know, what's the one thing for my spouse? What's the one thing for this manager in their priority list? A lot of employees never ask that, you know, like they're just making assumptions. So I've done it myself, Stephanie, a lot. And don't we wish we knew some of these things earlier in our career? But yeah, so thanks so much for bringing that example up. That was really good.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anyone else wish to try any one of these questions? You have a wonderful opportunity here for safe, constructive feedback. Okay, in that case, and Radula, how many people do we still have in the session?
We have 27.
27, okay, that's good. A lot of people are hanging in there. There are great photographs. I'm sure there are living people behind those photographs. I'm going to share my screen again, and we shall pass through this area. Okay, so do you have any questions for me? So I think you probably have picked up that I'm encouraging you to make the interview a dialogue, not that you sit there in the interrogation room and just answer those questions, but your answer leads into another question. And this is, again, really important. Can you do this? Do you want to? Will you fit in? Well, here's where we turn it around. Can you do what they want you to do? Do you really want to do it? And will they fit in with you? So you're reversing it too, because many of us have made the mistake of not paying attention to a red flag that comes up during an interview process. The red flag is usually a sense from our inner voice, something's off here. And intellectually, especially as data scientists, you may repress that and say, oh, but you know, I'll figure that out. If that feeling is strong, pay attention to it and make sure you ask some questions that allude to the kind of culture that's going on here and the real job they want you to do. So if they say at some point, you know, do you have any questions for me? Well, in your research about this company, maybe you know somebody ideally in that company or in that group, you could get a follow-up of some sense you have about what the culture is like. Because some people will say, oh, watch out, that's a toxic culture. I don't really know what a toxic culture is, except by some specific examples. Oh yeah, they're all micromanagers. You feel like you're strangled at the end of the day. Well, that would be a toxic culture. But you have to ask questions to find out what do they mean. So the second point here, this is a really powerful question. It's a gift to you. Keep it in your back pocket, because what happens is when you ask powerful questions, people are generally not ready to respond. They have to leave you for a moment. They're going to go into their unconscious mind and imagine how it would be different here if they got the right person. So a sign of this, if you're aware enough to pay attention during the interview, is when you say, yeah, I'm curious, if you got the absolute best candidate, how would things be different here in 6 months? And their eyes are going to change. They're going to go, or like this, or maybe like this. And they're accessing different parts of their neurology to either visualize, hear, or feel, or imagine, talk to themselves about what really matters. And so what they say next is golden. You want to remember what they tell you after a question like that. For instance, it might be, yeah, I'll tell you, if we got the right person in here, I wouldn't have to be doing this crap myself. I would be more strategic. And your answer could be, oh, wow, if you got the right person, you would be able to be more strategic. You wouldn't have to do a lot of this legwork yourself. Exactly. That's what I mean. I don't know if you picked that up, but I was speaking their words back to them, and they weren't really paying attention to that fact. All they heard was, you heard me. You could be one of us. You could work for me. You know, you're a good listener. You're on the same page. So it doesn't hurt to use people's exact words back to them in an interview. You don't want to do it in an obvious way, you know, or, you know, a situation that isn't kind of flowing along, because then it would be noticeable perhaps. But I would always remember words that people would say that were important phrases for their group. And I would start using their phrases so that they got a feeling that I already sounded like them. So I could be one of them. I could fit in there. Okay. Yeah. You could say towards the end of an interview, yeah, I'm curious, you know, from what you've heard of me and you saw my resume on LinkedIn, how would you say my skills match the position for what you're really looking for so far? Am I kind of in that middle area, more towards the top, maybe not in the middle? What's your rough estimate? And they might say, well, I'm not allowed to give you that, but I've really enjoyed this interview. Or they might say, oh yeah, you're good. Yep, you're good. Or people have a hard time saying you're not good, so they might do this. Yeah, you're probably going to make it. You get that? Yeah, you're probably going to make it. The mind is always speaking through the body. Okay, last one of these points, very important. A lot of my clients forget this, or they just never picked it up. But never leave an interview situation without having an agreement of what the next steps are. Whose responsibility to get the agreement? It's yours. They don't need any agreement. They already have a job. You're the one who's going to be waiting, wondering, when are they going to get back to me? So, Bob, do you have any final question for me? Yes, Sarah, I've really enjoyed this whole process. And I think you told me that you've gotten all of your folks in that you're serious about. When can I expect to hear back from somebody about my next steps? And who would that be? So she might say, oh, well, it'll be from me and probably in a week. And I say, oh, great, thank you. And I know you get really busy. So if next Thursday I don't hear from you, is it okay with you if I contact you on Friday? Yeah, you'll hear from us, but sure. And how would you like me to contact you on Friday if I don't hear from you before? Would it be by email or phone? Oh, email would be good. Okay, great. Thanks, Sarah. If I don't hear from you next week because you get busy, I'll email you the day after. I'm really excited about this. It's been a great pleasure. Do hope it works out. All the best. If we were in person again, we'd shake hands, and that would be the deal. But not. So I guess we just have to elbow bump from virtually or whatever now. So I hope you get that, why it's so important to get the agreement. Otherwise, you're just hung out there waiting. And believe me, when you're looking for a job, you're in between jobs. It's amazing how rude people can be and dysfunctional, but you got to let it just flow right off. You like wash it right off of you because it happens all the time. It's not personal. Oh, a couple of tips. So I'm not bad right now. I'm in a room that gets better fill light during the day. As the evening starts to come on, I might need another lamp, but I think you can see me pretty well. And you want that lighting to be even and not dramatic. You don't want a plant to be coming out of the top of your head. Try to have it just be a sort of neutral, pleasant background. Nothing, some people have overhead fans running and it looks like they have a whirligig hat on. So watch out for that one. You have to know where your camera lens is located. Mine is at the top of my laptop, and I try to move my image of myself and you to be right under the green light of my camera lens, because then I'm more easily looking at the lens, and you right now might think I'm looking exactly at you, and I'm hoping to, although I don't see a picture of you. I just see this green light, which I think green is positive, right? So look at the lens, and I put the term soft focus because if you've got 3 or 4 people and you can organize their video frames to be right by your camera lens, you can look at the lens and go to a soft focus, which is peripheral vision. If you do that, it will be one of those body-mind messages that calms your system. The Hawaiians call it hakalau, and it's a way of being aware in the moment and knowing you're safe. Because when you have peripheral vision going, it's kind of ancient in our physiology and our neurology. It means you're safe. You can see anything that might be coming at you. So I try to do this kind of peripheral vision when there's a number of people there. It's a soft focus. And so you've noticed I've varied my vocal tone a lot. I get a little Italian at times, or Brazilian or Caribbean with my hands. What it does is it changes the energy. It moves it around. So if I were really rigidly stiff and had not much of a vocal change, I wouldn't be able to hold your attention very well. It doesn't have to be dramatic, just, you know. And smiling is very important because we like smiles as human beings in general. We don't like smiling at the wrong time, inappropriate smiling, and we don't like overdoing it, but we do like a pleasant look on the person's face. And I suggest you should put around you, in front of you, pleasant images, maybe even a mirror. Now, we don't have to worry with virtual because you see yourself in the screen. But you might want to put a reminder like a smiley face or a picture of a loved one, or even the word smile, to remind you that you don't get stuck in your head. You try to be there in the mind of that person who's on the other side of the wires, somewhere in the cloud. Okay, so positive images to keep your spirits up. Here is something I always like to bring attention to. I heard it only a little bit tonight, but it is a popular thing to change up the way we normally speak in traditional English. So normally when we're asking a question, our voice goes up. Would you like to go to the movies? If we make a statement, it would be good to go to the movies tonight. That's kind of neutral. And then we could have the paternal command. Okay, we're all going to the movies. It just dropped. That's a command. So anyone out there want to give me a good example of up speaking or up talking? Do you know what I mean by that? You can just unmute yourself and speak it up if you can.
I believe I can. So this is Ella.
Great, please do it.
Do you mean like, oh yes, Bob, I love your presentation. I like your coaching style. It's like never land in a plane. So like always like this,
Yes.
And always like that. And I was not speaking this way, but I picked it from people who
Yes.
are around me. So,
Oh,
now
yes,
I'm doing the same.
especially when you're a non-native English speaker, you notice these, you're paying attention, like, are they more influential the way they're speaking? So in our tribal group, you know, with ourselves, our work team, we might upspeak because everybody's doing it. But if I said, Ella, do you feel that you're really confident in this position? how would you respond with upspeaking? Come back. Ella, so are you confident in your Python skills?
Yes, I am, because I took some classes and I had some projects that I was working on. So things like this.
Great, good, thank you. So I hope everybody gets it. It is confusing in traditional English when I say, I'm really good at Python. I've had so much experience with it. You know, like you want to go down. And in my coaching and communication skills, you know, we use these things to our advantage. So I could ask a question this way. Yeah, I wanted to know, is it okay with you for us to leave now? That's being a little dramatic, but you see what I did? It wasn't a question. Is it okay with you for us to leave now? Because that's the last thing that hangs in the air. I bring it up just because, yeah, I'm confident with Python. In fact, it's my favorite language. There's no doubt that I think it's my favorite language. Okay, thank you, Ella.
Thank you.
Okay, so that is all of our regularly scheduled program. I love this quote by Yogi Berra, the famous catcher of the New York Yankees, who said all these interesting things like, nobody ever goes to that restaurant anymore, it's too crowded. Anyway, in theory and practice are the same. In practice, they're not. So practice is what makes all of this a lot better. And practice makes perfect, as we say, although I'm not big on perfect. I'm big on good enough. Sometimes in the factory, you have to make every chip perfectly. Absolutely. Machines are good at that. Perfect for a human being, it's a little challenging. So at this point, I want to mention that you do have the handout, which has some of the language I've been using available for you to, let's see, I'm going to stop the share, for you to remember as you say it, as you review, and even in the breakout section, there's a repeat of some of the information. And I'm good for a few minutes more if anyone has any general questions about the terror or joy of interviewing. Anyone? I'll also look in the chat just in case.
Yeah, so there are 2 comments in the chat, Bob.
Okay.
Just like compliments for you. Somebody, they don't have a name, they just have test. So yeah, they say, I like your event very much. You spoke slowly and clearly, and I got most of the points. It's my best experience in a long time English conversation. A ton of thanks. And there's another comment from Ella. She says, it's a great tip, moving the picture right below the camera lens. Look at the camera, but never at this tip. Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Yes, it's a strange world we're in now. And since there are a number of folks on the call who may not have been born in this country, or American may not have been your original language, it's interesting to watch how people handle all the trouble that's going on. You know, so many Americans, we've been privileged, you know, not to have disasters going on around us. And we get a little spoiled. I was very fortunate in college to spend a year abroad and learn another language and be an outsider. And it forever changed me. It was the most educational year of my college. And I also know, as I mentioned a little bit before, that the work the human brain does to learn another language, or 2 or 3 languages, really prevents Alzheimer's and dementia. There's something wonderful about the way the brain, the neuroplasticity of the brain, when people speak more than one language, that is really healthful for the future. A little I don't know,
Bob,
piece of info. Yes.
can
There,
I?
go on,
Yeah.
go on.
So
Yeah.
I do speak multiple languages. I run a business. I call shots, but whenever I'm giving interview, I am nervous.
Because you want to get the right.
So
Yeah. Are you
I take a lot of interviews and I'm good at taking interviews, but when I'm giving interview, I am so nervous.
Well, think about why you're nervous. Is it that you're concerned that you will not live up to some level of performance that you have running in your head that you should be a certain way? Is that possibly something to do with it?
I try to be, most of my work, I'm very organized and I know what I'm trying to do. But when I'm giving interview, I get lost that am I answering what has been asked? And in that, I lose out. And I sometimes like right now how I'm talking that I'm getting lost. I'm thinking about, I'm looking somewhere else and I don't look confident.
Right. Well, I mean, again, like Yogi says, it's practice. So one of the best ways is I usually have clients create a number of success stories. They follow this pattern of issue, action, outcome. So they have 8 to 12 stories, ideally some of them quantifiable, of their success. So you are kind of filling yourself up with remembering what you've offered before, how much you contributed, and you can recall those stories when needed. To me, interviewing is a little artificial because you're trying to win this person over that you are the right one for them.
Exactly.
And of course, you want to be your true self. So you're not going to bend yourself out of shape to be unhappy working in that position. So it's got to be a match. That's the most important part. The more that you think through your successes and you believe in your brand, your values, the more you can kind of help yourself breathe a little bit, in that moment, and trust yourself that your inner voice will come to help you when it's needed. I'm a sort of meditator in that it's hard for me. My mind gets busy and, I try different ways to just let go of everything. The more I practice meditation imperfectly, the better effect it has on me in general. So I would say to everyone, the more you can do whatever meditation is for you, for a lot of people, just being in nature, moving with the trees and leaves, being around bodies of water, with an animal, with friends, that can be very restorative. And, power posing might be very helpful in that case when you get nervous. Whenever, when we get nervous, we're actually telling ourselves some messages. So try to be aware of what is it you're telling yourself that makes you get nervous. Is it, oh, you're going to flub this? You're going to get lost? Well, you won't get lost if you practice keeping it short and asking, would you like to know more? That's like a discipline that you're imposing on yourself. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
I suppose I need to practice a lot and maybe meditate and, stay positive. Thank you.
Yeah. It's interesting. For decades, there's been so much research and talk about the power of positive thinking, but it's true. I'm a big fan of epigenetics. The next step after DNA, that we are not determined by our DNA and our RNA. We are determined by our reaction to our environment, because the real brain of our cells is the membrane, not the nucleus. The brain is the membrane that's reacting to what comes at it. We're made of trillions of cells. And if we put ourselves in a negative environment, or if we create one in our head, we're sending those messages out and the body reacts. And remember, we are actually in control of our brain. The only people who may have still a very good effect on us would be our parents. And that may never go away. But think of it that actually we're choosing our thoughts. So why not choose the best thoughts? Why not choose, I'm going to ace this interview. I'm going to fake it until I become it. Another good TED Talk. You know, I am going to be the best person I can be because I want to be a good match. And if they think I'm not a match, why would I want to work there if they think I'm not the best match? It's not they're rejecting me. It's they don't think that I'm bringing what they need. I'm trying to persuade them, but they may think someone else. And often in interviews, the interviewing people don't really know what they need. They're discovering it by talking to different people. Every once in a while, there's a team that really is clear the skills they need, but they're figuring it out along the way.
So there is a question in the chat, Bob.
Thank you.
So can you clarify up talking? Should we use it or not?
Right. So the coach's standard reaction is, it depends. So if you notice that that person who's interviewing is going, I'm really enjoying working in this company, you might want to say, I'm glad you're really enjoying working in this company, because you want to create rapport with that person. So if you are radically different than them, they might think you don't fit in. So I'd say listen, because in general, I don't encourage upspeaking because I think it doesn't support our confidence enough. However, if you got a panel of interviews and they're all upspeaking to one another, you may have to upspeak to be accepted by them. And I did have a woman in her 50s, a very successful patent lawyer, who at one point was upspeaking so much in her conversation. I said, Marilyn, I just have to give you some feedback. It's my job as your coach. Do you notice that you're upspeaking quite frequently? She said, what? What do you mean? And I said, oh, you know what? And I told her, and then of course she was icy silent because she got self-confident, conscious that she might say it again. And she didn't say it as much. She didn't speak that way as much. She did a good job interviewing. She probably did some upspeaking. She got the job. And when we talked next time, she was upspeaking every sentence. So I don't know, like it worked for her, and it just depends. In general, I'd say go with the traditional way of speaking. Any other questions?
No, I don't see any questions. Does anyone have any questions?
And I say thank you, Mridula, for hanging in there and keeping this all going technically too. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your appreciation, you guys.
There is one question, sorry, somebody just typed out. Oh, yeah. Oh, were you just reading that? Sorry.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think, yeah, so
it's in
Rocky,
the handout.
yeah, her question is, would you kindly let us know how could we request your help further?
Oh, yes. My contact information is in the handout. That's the overview of some of the key things that I said. So you have them in writing about how to answer to some of these questions. And then I've got some books, like, you know, the ones that I found very useful around language and communication and focus for this stuff.
Yeah, and she has some good feedback as well. Thank you, Bob, for your workshop. It was quite very well informative, structured and informative and practical. You rightly said that interviewing needs practice. I would certainly practice it at my end, but would definitely be helpful to get more help in this area.
So, right. Bob, I'm here as well in front of you in the camera.
Hey.
So thank you so much for your workshop. It was very helpful, informative, and just repeating the same thing, but you know, I was really impressed. And perhaps I'll reach out to you for further help as well.
Sure, yeah, I'd be glad to help. Yeah, I am certified in a different kind of coaching, which is the basis of sales training. It's NLP, but it's not natural language processing. It's from some decades ago called neuro-linguistic programming, and it's about how the words we say reflect how we think and how we have been programmed and program ourselves to react to things. So to change the programming that I'm always nervous in being interviewed, we have to change the way of thinking about interviews. And so I love working with clients on those things. Big on visualizations, you know, to imagine a different kind of situation to be in. So yeah, I'd be glad to help anyone.
I think you would be, it would be very interesting to get your help, because something like that, something similar to that, I'm looking for some help. Yeah, something.
Great.
So
Yeah, you got my information. We'll get back in touch.
Sure, definitely. Thank you.
Women in Big Data is such a good organization, isn't it? I mean, there's so much career development that comes from the group, and obviously it keeps growing and growing and growing. It's fantastic. I'm glad to help.
Yeah, and thank you, Bob. It was really good, informative session today, and for all your volunteering with women in big data. It has been really helpful. I myself interviewed recently, and I got 2 offers. They were both internal, like in the same company, but it was still like, I was still pretty happy about it, and all the learnings from your sessions, right? Like resume writing and LinkedIn and conveying your brand, all of that was quite helpful.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, I have a graduate degree in what's called educational psychology or performance technology. And I did a lot of course development many years at Apple Computer, either you know, online with the Mac, like on disks, and then web-based and written things. So I've always been interested in the power of language, and I've always worked with very smart engineers who, you know, were way above me in knowledge base. But we hit it off because I could help translate all the stuff they knew into language that anyone could understand. And, you know, it's that collaborative effect that really has the best results, I think.